are watching eco-village organizing that are known as Evo TV. Today on the show, we're going to discuss the power of coal in British Columbia. Is this carbon a cash crop or a detriment to our environment? And what is the future of power in British Columbia? Is coal part of the solution or problem? Is there such a thing as green coal power? And why is coal making waves in BC? With us, we have Joe Foy from the Wilderness Committee. You are one of the national campaign directors. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on.
So tell us, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot about is the Raven coal mine. There is right now a campaign to put a halt to this coal mine, but it isn't necessarily the only operation of its kind, as coal is becoming quickly popular across British Columbia. What can you tell us about this project in particular?
Well, Raven coal mine is a little bit about the old economy meeting the new economy. And the new economy in this case is the shellfish industry that's in Fanny Bay, which is on that part of Vancouver Island near Comox. If this coal mine is built, the shellfish farmers see that it will pollute the water and really negatively impact their business. So they're against it. The Wilderness Committee is helping, working with local people such as the shellfish operators to organize against the construction of this mine, which we see as polluting and which we see as contributing to global greenhouse gas emissions, which is the main cause of climate change.
Currently, I understand there are 3 proposals for new coal mines, and there is also the working underground Quinsam mine near Comox in operation. What can you tell us about coal mining in general in British Columbia?
Well, of course, there's a big push on now for new coal with the growing economies in Asia, in particular in China. The market for coal is growing, and Canada is a major coal exporting country. We're about number 7 on the hit parade as far as countries that export coal around the world. So we have a major responsibility in the crime of human-caused climate change. Our problem is we've become addicted not to the use of coal, but to the dollars it brings into our economy. So it's not an easy thing for Canadians, it's not an easy thing for British Columbians, but at the Wilderness Committee we argue we need to stop the opening of new coal mines and we need to look at ramping down our coal production in the face of countries like China wanting more and more coal from us. It's our responsibility to help fight climate change.
Most of these projects are said to be really great for the economy because they bring in jobs and money. And what are some of the actual negative impacts that they're actually going to have on the local environment? And what are some of the local issues that the community is struggling with, apart from the Fanny Bay oysters?
Depends where the coal mine is. I mean, coal mines affect water quality, but they can also, a big open pit coal mine will wreck a lot of habitat. And so in the Peace River country, I note that the West Moberly First Nations has just won a court case holding off a proposed coal mine there because of its impact on an endangered herd of caribou, which the First Nations has relied on for centuries as food and which is now dwindled to an endangered species because of all the industrial development there. So it depends on the location. These are massive, massive projects which can affect air, water, and then there's the global impact of what happens when this coal is burned. It is a direct influence on human-caused climate change.
Let's get one thing straight. Is there such a thing as green coal power?
No, in our opinion at the Wilderness Committee, there is no such a thing. Around North America, in Saskatchewan, for instance, in our country, there are a number of billion-dollar projects to look at sequestering the carbon. They're unproven, they're very expensive, and essentially they all involve pumping carbon into the ground, and nobody can tell us what can happen in the future. So it could be a huge waste of money and time and effort with still the end result, we further impact our climate. Coal is a very dirty fuel and a fuel that we've got to work to phase out.
So in other words, what we're seeing is not only that there are companies out there that are investing heavily in greenwashing or marketing coal as friendlier as an energy source, as a friendly way of greening the coal, but also that there's a lot of greenwashing both provincially and federally of these relatively dirty industries such as coal mining and oil production in tar sands.
Well, that's right. I mean, that carbon energy is really affecting the politics of British Columbia now, whether it's tar sands pipelines or new coal mines, it is affecting every part of both our provincial and our federal government policy. That's the bad news. The good news is, with our relatively small population, with our already abundant, clean hydro energy that we already have, we can build a pretty good future here. We can protect sustainable industries here. We can resist big oil and big coal and provide a real example to other people in other parts of the world that are trying to figure it out. So there's our two ways to go. And right now that fight is being fought on the ground by regular folks around the Raven Coal Project. And I think we're going to win.
Throughout Canada, we're currently seeing an overall increase in coal mining across BC, especially. Is there a trend to seek out these projects that would potentially be valuable on the energy market? Is that the trend we're seeing?
Well, certainly. I mean, that's how the mining industry works here and around the world. Not just coal, but we're seeing expansion of copper and gold mining, coal, not just here, in many, many countries. So citizens are banding together in countries all around the world to try and resist the bad effects of mining as it comes into their territory. So we're not the only ones facing this.
Are there really a lot of Vancouver Island residents that look for jobs in mining industry at the point?
No, it's not a high percentage of jobs, and I would argue that the ball we need to keep our eye on is a vibrant economy that we know is going to last over time. And that's why it's very, very important to protect the waters and the fisheries of Vancouver Island. Because if we get a continuous toxic flow from one of these mines, that can be a very, very big problem. And Vancouver Island has had these kinds of problems before with mines. The Solom River, for instance, a mine operated there for only 2 years in the 1960s. We've spent millions, the taxpayer has spent millions of dollars trying to deal with the toxic mine runoff ever since. 2 years of mine operation, and then decades of trying to deal with the poisons that come out of the hole in the mountain. Here in Howe Sound, up at Britannia Beach, a Britannia copper mine became the largest source of acid mine drainage in North America, and it went on for decades. When I was a kid, there was a fishing derby in Howe Sound, the Sun Salmon Derby. No longer exists because the salmon have been so greatly depleted. It's only recently that they've got a water treatment plant in there, and the they is us. The taxpayers had to pay. The company is long gone. So citizens would be well advised to pay very careful attention when a proposed mine comes to your neck of the woods.
What are some of these toxins that are created, and how difficult is the cleanup process as well as the funding for such projects?
Well, what happens is you get when the certain ores are opened up, you get a kind of a bacteria in the mountain, and that can release a whole series of heavy metals.
From what I understand, scientists have found that there's actually quite an intriguing amount of these microbacteria that live in deep layers of the ground, and upon mining, they're not even quite certain what they're going to unearth for the most part.
Well, right, there's the biology and the ecology, but there's also what happens with the companies. What we've seen time and time again is the companies come in with big promises, they make their mines, and then they're gone. And the little microbes do their work, and before you know it, you've got this toxic cocktail of heavy metals coming out into your water. The company has taken their money and left. And it leaves the citizens to clean up. And it's not just money, it's things like we no longer have a Sun Salmon Derby fishing those wonderful runs of salmon in Howe Sound. There's a big price to be paid. Now, it doesn't mean we can't have mining, but it does mean we need to have very much stricter laws, and some mines will not be allowed to proceed, and that's how it should be.
You said that there are a lot of toxins that are released when one of these mines is opened, but others state that there is a huge differential between underground mines and open mines. Is there really a true difference between those two and their consequence on local environment?
Well, there will be differences, but there's enough bad influence on water or potential bad influence on water that, once again, it's essential that especially the people that live around these mining areas understand the environmental assessment process and have faith in it. In other words, that the process takes long enough, allows science to speak in an unbiased manner, and takes into account the people's wishes. And in the provincial assessment, that's not what happens. It's a rushed assessment. It has very tight deadlines, all for the benefit of the company and none of it for the benefit of the people who actually live there. So it's very hard to, for a person who lives near a mine to have faith in the provincial assessment that we're actually getting the facts. So it's like driving at a very high speed with your headlights turned off.
The Wilderness Committee at this point fighting the proposal of the Raven coal mine?
Well, we have a number of our folks actually in the Vancouver Island communities right now, because as we speak, the federal environmental assessment process is ongoing. And so we've joined with other community groups in Port Alberni and the Comox Valley and other places to make sure that as many people as possible know that they can attend the public meetings and have their say, and that what they say matters. We have seen time and time again on other projects, if people take the time to come out, the system can actually work. A lot of people, for instance, came out to Williams Lake and voiced their concern about the proposed mine at Fish Lake, and that mine was turned down. So public participation can work, and we're helping it work.
Who are some of the major actors in local communities who are having their voice heard and who are trying to put a halt to this project?
Well, of course, the main group is a group of citizens called Coal Watch. And you can go online, you can find the Wilderness Committee online, you can find Coal Watch online, and learn about them. I've talked about the oyster farmers of Fanny Bay. They're a major player in all this. The community, the Port Alberni Environmental Coalition and Port Alberni, all have come together to resist this mine. Because of course there would be the mine, and then there would be the transportation of coal in trucks to the port in Port Alberni. So all the way along that corridor, from the Courtenay area all the way into Port Alberni, there's resistance.
Well, it sounds like a really lovely way to engage with your local community as well, with some of the pertinent issues that we have in the province. But that aside, going back to the Raven coal mine, is this really going to affect a lot of communities that are opposed to this project? How many of them are stepping up to engaging with the protest activities and trying to knock on the right doors?
Well, certainly hundreds and thousands. We're expecting hundreds to come out to the meetings, and of course, people talk in their families. The local media has been talking about it a lot, so it spreads out literally to thousands in the communities. It's how our democracy should work. It's not easy. People go to work, they come home, they're tired, they like. We all need some time to ourselves, and then this comes along, but it's always going to be like that. And it's very rewarding when you can see that by working with others, you can shape some really important policy in your community. And you don't want to wake up one day and look out on Fanny Bay and see the falling down buildings and structures that used to be part of the world famous oyster fishery there. We've all seen stuff like that in the past. It's going to be very rewarding for people to look out and see that industry is beautiful and that water is still clean into the future, and be able to tell their kids and their grandkids that they had something to do with that.
So tell us a little bit about the Wilderness Committee, your work at the Wilderness Committee, and the fronts that you are currently engaged on?
My gosh, the Wilderness Committee got started in 1980, and our core value is protection of wild areas. British Columbia is remarkable in North America because of its diversity. We have more plants and animals than any province in Canada. It's because of our mountains, and we have deserts and rainforests, all those kinds of things. So I'm very passionate about getting new wilderness parks. Our goal is to see half the province in wilderness parks. Since 1980, we've moved from 5.5% of the province to 14% of the province. So we're moving in the right direction, more optimism. But since that time, we've branched out. I've already told you we're working with people across the province to stop the Site C Dam and save the beautiful farmland and wildlands of the Peace River. We work to get more public transit in the urban areas, and we're still working to get new protected areas in places like Clayoquot Sound. We're advocating endangered species legislation here in British Columbia. So many issues engaged on getting the salmon farms off our coast to protect our wild salmon stock. The way we work is on the ground, and most of the work is done by citizen volunteers who come to hang out and to strategize and to figure out ways to move more and more people, engage more and more people in connecting with their elected representatives and making democracy work the way it should work.
How did you get involved with the Wilderness Committee?
Well, I was born in the Langley, Surrey area, and I like to go hiking in the local mountains. And I originally had thought as a kid that all the old growth forest, all the ancient forest had been logged a long time ago. But when I started to hike out in the mountains around here, I ran into these big 1,000-year-old trees, and I realized, wow, some of this still exists. But then I saw it was being logged like crazy. I thought that was crazy. And I heard about the Stein River Valley, which is the largest unlogged valley we have in our region. It's up by Lytton. And I heard there was this group, the Wilderness Committee, that was trying to see it protected. And boy, I had to go volunteer. And that was 1985. And in 1988, I started to work for the Wilderness Committee, and I've been a spokesperson for the Wilderness Committee ever since. But it was that Stein Valley. And in 1995, after many years of hard work by the Lytton and Mount Currie First Nations and all those other volunteers and groups, in 1995, the Stein Valley was declared in the Kapnuk Stein Valley Heritage Park, protected for all time. And that's a great outcome.
Is it important, in your opinion, for us to go out and actually see these places and really enjoy the nature that we're surrounded by?
It is really important. Every part of the world has their own culture. And through culture affects how you think about the world. And in this part of the world, it's really interesting. We have access to these beautiful, wild, natural areas. Places where things that could eat you. That'll change your thinking. We also are surrounded by all these First Nations cultures with very long view and experience on the land. And these things affect us too. But they don't affect us if we don't get out there, if we don't meet our neighbors in the First Nations communities, if we don't go out and experience what it's like to see an orca whale or to see the tracks of a grizzly bear, to actually not just see it, but to feel it, or to see a 1,000-year-old tree. It doesn't seep into us in the same way. Or even here in the city, where I live in New Westminster, I can walk down to my local salmon stream, the Burnett River, and see the salmon that come in from the wilderness that is the North Pacific Ocean, and they come right into my neighborhood. All this affects us in a good way, makes for a good life here in this part of the world.
How accessible is nature at this point to British Columbians?
Well, it's very accessible. I mean, some nature, some of the big juicy wilderness areas, you need a car, but not all of it. For instance, the Stein Valley, you can take a bus up to Lytton and then walk in towards the park. Mears Island, you can go on public transit. And then, of course, we've got the beautiful North Shore Mountains, and then we have our wild places here in the city. And Surrey, where we are now, I mean, I grew up in this area, and Surrey's done a wonderful job of not only protecting the agricultural land reserve, which has a lot of natural areas, but also the stream side. So there's a lot of protected gullies and little natural corners in this place too. So there's both the urban wild places and the great, spectacular wild places that are out there in the province.
What do you say about the future of energy in BC? How much do we need to make sure that our generations are well taken care of, and is there really any need to create any of this additional energy production in British Columbia?
I believe in sort of simple answers. So one simple answer is nothing can continue to grow forever. Nothing in this world can do that. And I think everybody would agree with that. So what about us? If we can't grow energy more and more and more forever, when have we reached the limits? And I say we've reached our limits. I say the days of damming big rivers or spewing more carbon into the air are gone. So our future is living within our limits. No more destruction of farmland. No more pollution of water. So it's what we do with the energy. So I'm a big fan of increased public transit, for instance, in the major urban areas. Not only is it better for the environment, easier on our energy use, it makes for a better life. It's easier to get to work. You can snooze on the public transit when you get to your job. So living within our limits does not mean a sadder, lesser life. It can mean a better life. A more fun life, a healthier life. So I think the future is about looking at how we use our resources in a smarter and better way to have a better life, but certainly living within our means.
How sustainable are we here in British Columbia? Are we really living up to this reputation of sustainability, or do we have a long way to go?
I think we have a great future, but if you look at the kinds of resources we use per capita here in British Columbia and Canada in general, in many cases, we use more than anybody else. We use more electricity per person, more oil and gas per person. We're always up in the upper 2 or 3 in the planet. We put more carbon in the air, largely because of our heavy industries. So certainly, at the moment, our report card doesn't look very good, but I am very optimistic that because so many of our people have a great education, because we live in such a beautiful part of the world, because we do see the problems, the issues, I think we have a really good future. But it's not going to come easy, and what I always say is people have to get engaged at the community level. Don't let these big issues grind you down. Find a place where you can plug into a volunteer group or however you can plug in, and we can have a great future in this part of the world.
Have we really seen an investment both locally and federally in greening of the world? Have we really made a great climate change policy that would protect our future? You
know what? There's been an awful lot of hot air from our governments on that, and I could list I mean, in this region, squandering our money on freeway expansion when our public transit dearly could use that money. I could point to a number of failures, but I can also point to successes. And I think the successes in the urban region, I keep saying, is a better and strong, more dollars into public transit and less dollars into freeways and bridges. And every time we get housing that allows us to live more compactly and closer to where we work, all these things, I would say, are green projects and make people's lives better. Every time a piece of farmland is protected from a bad development, that's a good thing. I can show you a number of cases where that hasn't happened, but I can also show you many cases where citizens have protected farmland. So I remain optimistic. But it won't happen. We won't get that good future if people aren't engaged.
How do we build this concept of community when we're surrounded by urban density and, many, many people living without necessarily connecting to one another? Where do we start?
Well, we start in many different ways, and the Wilderness Committee Environmental Movement is a part of that. And our part is this. Any activity that brings citizens together to make their community a better place ends up making the citizens' lives better just by being together. So in our kinds of projects, going out together to build a trail or to clean a creek or that kind of thing, you get the result of your work, but you also get the relationships and the connection into your community. And I think that's really, really, really important. And I think that's how we bring our communities back and how we make our voices powerful the way they should be. Because when it's like that, you look around you and you got a much better place to live.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks to Joe Foy of the Wilderness Committee, and I hope you've enjoyed our show thus far. We're not leaving yet, so stay with us to watch these incredible stories.
Love, peace, these are what I hold in the palm of my outstretched hand. World, take, and then you will behold the heart that is in your land. Pain, hate will soon pass away to love once more in man. So try, please, to understand the heart that is in your land. Reflects on the green like crystals that lie beside jade. Earth moves its breath amongst the fields, a lover whose heart cannot wait. Pain, hate will soon pass away to love once more in man. So try, please, to understand the heart that is in your land. Pain, hate will soon pass away to love once more in man. So try, please, to understand the heart that is in your land. So try, please, to understand the heart that is in your land. So try, please, to understand the heart that is in your land.